The last outpost. The emerald glow of Nebula J-117 spilled through the viewport like liquid smoke, casting everything inside Horizon Point in an eerie underwater light. The station groaned under constant pressure, its old support beams fighting against the gravitational pull of the nearby dwarf star. Lieutenant Lyndon Frost adjusted his collar, once crisp and regulation perfect, now worn soft at the edges after 18 months at this forgotten outpost. He stood before the synthesizer, waiting for his morning coffee with the patience of a man who had nowhere else to be. The machine gurgled and sputtered, finally dispensing a dark liquid that smelled vaguely of burnt circuits and false promises. "Another day in paradise," he muttered, taking a cautious sip and immediately regretting it. That's when he felt it, the shift in the air pressure that always preceded her arrival. Not a sound, but an absence of sound, as if the room itself held its breath. Nyara didn't enter spaces, she claimed them. Lyndon turned, coffee forgotten, as the tall figure stepped through the doorway. Her obsidian exoskeleton gleamed under the green light, absorbing then reflecting it in hypnotic patterns. The Tracekin warrior moved with liquid precision, each step calculated yet somehow effortless. The silver markings across her forehead, symbols of rank and battle honors, caught the light as she tilted her head slightly, acknowledging his presence without meeting his eyes. She never spoke. Not to him. Not to anyone on the station. The human Treskin joint mission had been operating for 7 months, and no one had heard her voice. The other Treskins communicated in terse, efficient sentences when absolutely necessary. Nyara, their commander, communicated through data packets, interface transmissions, and the occasional sharp gesture. "Morning, Commander," Lyndon offered, raising his mug in mock salute. "Coffee's terrible as always. I'd recommend the protein paste instead, tastes like disappointment rather than outright betrayal." Her silver eyes flickered toward him for half a second, then away. No response, as usual. She moved to the far corner of the mess hall, taking her customary seat facing the wall, back straight as a blade. Lyndon watched her for a moment, then made a decision that even he recognized as ill-advised. He walked to the synthesizer, punched in a code, and waited as it produced a small plate of what the station's AI optimistically called fruit pastry. It was roughly circular, covered in blue crystals that were supposed to resemble sugar, and had the density of a small meteor. He approached her table slowly, making sure his footsteps were audible. Startling a Tracekin warrior was a good way to lose limbs, according to the briefing materials he'd skimmed before deployment. "Peace offering," he said, sliding the plate onto her table. "Or possible weapon, depending on how you look at it. Either way, it's better than standard rations." Nyara didn't move. She stared at the pastry as if it might be a sophisticated explosive device. "I've been stationed here long enough to go slightly mad," Lyndon continued, settling into the chair across from her without invitation. "You'll notice it first in the eyes. Then comes talking to inanimate objects. I had a 20-minute conversation with the water recycler yesterday. It won the argument. Still nothing. Not even a blink. Look," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I get the whole warrior silence thing. Very intimidating, highly effective. But we're stuck on this metal box together for another 11 months. Would it kill you to try the pastry?" Something shifted in her posture, almost imperceptible, but Lyndon had spent months observing her from a distance. Her right hand moved, slowly and deliberately, toward the plate. Long, slender fingers with an extra joint picked up the pastry with unexpected delicacy. She examined it, turning it in the light like a suspicious jewel, then took the smallest possible bite. Lyndon waited, fighting the ridiculous urge to hold his breath. She chewed once, twice. Her eyes widened slightly. "Life-changing, right?" he said. "Or possibly life-threatening. The synthesizer has been acting up since that power surge last week." The corner of her mouth twitched, so quickly he almost missed it. Not quite a smile, but something in the vicinity of amusement. Before he could celebrate this minor victory, the station's alarm system erupted in a cacophony of wailing sirens and flashing lights. The emerald glow was suddenly cut with pulses of crimson warning. Perimeter breach in Sector 7, the automated system announced, its voice unnervingly calm. Unknown vessels approaching. All personnel to battle stations. Repeat, all personnel to battle stations. Nyara was already moving, the pastry forgotten. She slid from her seat with predatory grace, her hand touching the communication panel on her wrist armor. Data scrolled across its surface in Tracekin script. Lyndon's own comm unit buzzed against his wrist. Lieutenant Frost to Command Center, came Captain Hartford's voice, tense and clipped. On my way, he confirmed, then glanced at Nyara. Looks like breakfast will have to wait. She turned to him, and for the first time, he felt the full force of her attention. She tapped her wrist panel again, and to his shock, a translated message appeared on his comm unit, follow. He blinked at the single word, then at her retreating back as she moved swiftly toward the exit. Yes, ma'am, he murmured, falling into step behind her. The corridors of Horizon Point transformed during alert status. Panels slid aside revealing weapon caches, shield generators hummed to life, and scattered personnel moved with renewed purpose. Lyndon matched Nyara's pace as they navigated the labyrinthine path to command, noting how others, both human and Tracecan, flattened themselves against walls to let them pass. The command center doors hissed open, revealing organized chaos. Captain Hartford stood at the central console, her weathered face highlighted by the pulsing emergency lights. The other bridge officers, a mix of humans and Treskans, worked at their stations with tense efficiency. Report, Hartford barked as they entered. 3 vessels, unknown configuration, replied Officer Reeves from the sensor station. They've breached the nebula perimeter and are approaching at sublight speed. No response to hails. Nyara moved to the tactical station, interfacing directly with the console. Data streamed across the screens at her touch. Analysis? Hartford asked her. Nyara's fingers flew across the interface. A 3-dimensional projection appeared above the center table, 3 ships, sleek and predatory, moving in formation. Raiders, Lyndon said, recognizing the configuration from intelligence briefings. Scavengers. They target outposts like ours, strip them for parts and supplies. Hartford's expression hardened. Recommendations, Lieutenant. Before Lyndon could respond, Nyara's tactical display shifted, showing shield configurations and weapon placements. A battle plan, elegant in its simplicity. Commander Nyara suggests we reconfigure our shield harmonics to create the illusion of a critical system's failure, Lyndon interpreted, studying the display. Lure them in close, then deploy the electromagnetic pulse cannon from Sector 5, followed by targeted strikes from our defense platforms. Hartford raised an eyebrow. You can read Tracekin battle notation, Lieutenant. Parts of it, Lyndon admitted. I've been studying in my spare time. Not much else to do out here. Nyara's silver eyes fixed on him again, longer this time, containing something that might have been surprise. Implement the commander's plan, Hartford ordered. And pray those raiders take the bait. The next hour passed in tense preparation. Lyndon worked alongside Nyara at the tactical station, their movements forming an unexpected synchronicity. When the raiders approached, falling perfectly into the trap, Horizon Point revealed its teeth. The electromagnetic pulse fired, crippling the raiders' systems long enough for the defense platforms to target their engines and weapons arrays. They're retreating, Reeves announced, relief evident in her voice. Damage report, Hartford demanded. Minimal, Captain. Shield generators in Sector 3 are offline but reparable. No casualties. Hartford nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Well done, everyone. Especially you two, she added, glancing between Lyndon and Nyara. That was impressive coordination. Lyndon turned to Nyara, expecting her usual stone-faced response to praise. Instead, he found her watching him with an intensity that made him straighten unconsciously. Just doing my job, Captain, he said, not breaking eye contact with Nyara. As the command center returned to normal operations, Lyndon found himself walking beside Nyara in the corridor outside. That was some plan, he said. Simple but elegant. You anticipated every move they made. She stopped, turning to face him fully. Her silver eyes studied him as if seeing something new. Then, to his complete shock, she spoke. You understood, she said, her voice low and melodic, with an undercurrent of something like electricity. No human has ever read Tracecan battle notation correctly. Lyndon froze, momentarily at a loss for words. Her voice was nothing like he had imagined during all those one-sided conversations. I pay attention, he finally said, the understatement of his career. Why? The question hung between them, layered with meanings. He could have given many answers: professional interest, boredom, strategic advantage. Instead, he simply shrugged and said, seemed important. Nyara tilted her head, the silver markings on her forehead catching the light. You are unexpected, Lieutenant Frost. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Lyndon standing in the corridor, wondering if he had imagined the entire exchange. Storms of memory. The aftermath of a battle always felt the same to Lyndon, the surge of adrenaline slowly ebbing, leaving behind a hollow clarity that made everything seem sharper, more defined. He sat in the observation deck, watching the nebula's emerald clouds shift and swirl outside the reinforced viewport. The raiders were long gone, but the station remained at elevated alert status, just in case. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of the day settling into his bones. The coffee beside him had gone cold, forgotten during his contemplation of the vast green expanse beyond the glass. You should sleep. The voice startled him. He turned to find Nyara standing in the doorway, her exoskeleton powered down to minimal levels, the usual gleaming surface now matte and subdued. In this light, he could see the fine network of scars etched into the natural plating at her neck and jaw, battle marks, worn like honors. Probably, he agreed, gesturing to the empty seat beside him. But then I'd missed the show. Outside, the nebula was entering one of its active phases, waves of luminescence pulsing through the gas clouds like distant lightning. It was the closest thing to weather on this station, a reminder that some things remained wild and unpredictable even in the vacuum of space. To his surprise, she accepted the invitation, moving with that liquid grace to sit beside him. Up close, without the full power of her armor, she seemed different, still formidable, but somehow more present. Your battle notation saved lives today, Lyndon said after a moment. I've never seen a tactical plan adapt so quickly to changing variables. Nyara's silver eyes reflected the nebula's glow as she watched the display outside. It is not notation. It is thinking. The symbols are the language of combat. You learned it young, he asked, sensing an opening into her closely guarded world. She was quiet for so long that he thought she'd retreated back into silence. Then, so softly he almost missed it, I was 7 cycles when I received my first battle scar. Lyndon stilled, knowing the significance of what she just shared. According to the sparse information in the Alliance database, Tracecan warriors never discussed their training or scars with outsiders. That seems young, he said carefully. By Tracecan standards, I was late, she replied, a hint of something like bitter humor in her tone. Most begin at 5 cycles. The nebula pulsed again, sending shadows dancing across her face. Your world, Earth, it does not train its children for war. Not officially, not anymore, Lyndon answered. Though where I grew up, you learned to fight one way or another. The data files say you were born in a place called Detroit. He raised an eyebrow. You read my file? I read everyone's file, she said matter-of-factly. You were a criminal. Lyndon laughed softly. I was a survivor. Orphaned at 12, ran with street gangs until I was 17. Got caught boosting a military transport, best mistake I ever made. The recruiting officer gave me a choice, prison or service. You chose service. I chose a way out, he corrected. Didn't expect to actually be good at it. The silence between them felt different now, not the rigid barrier it had been for months, but something more permeable, allowing words to pass through. The raiders will return, Nyara said, changing the subject. With more ships. Probably, Lyndon agreed. We hurt their pride today. In my experience, that's more dangerous than hurting their ships. She nodded, the movement almost human in its subtlety. On Treska, pride is considered a liability. A weakness to be excised during training. Is that why you never spoke? He asked, emboldened by the unusual moment of openness. Some Trescan philosophy about the weakness of words. Her eyes shifted from the nebula to his face. No. I did not speak because there was nothing worth saying. The simplicity of her answer caught him off guard. And now? Now there is something worth saying. She rose in one fluid motion, her armor powering up slightly as if responding to some unspoken command. We should prepare for their return. I have calculations to complete. Before she could leave, the station shuddered violently. Lyndon was thrown from his seat, rolling with the impact as years of training took over. Nyara maintained her balance, her armor instantly shifting to combat readiness. The alarm klaxons began wailing again, but this time they were accompanied by the deep, ominous groan of metal under stress. That's not raiders, Lyndon said, pulling himself up. That's structural. Nebula storm, Nyara confirmed, already moving toward the door. Gravitational anomaly. More powerful than usual. They sprinted together through corridors that now tilted at subtle but disorienting angles. Emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in pulsing blue. All personnel, secure stations, Captain Hartford's voice came over the comm system. Gravitational anomaly detected. Brace for secondary impacts. As if on cue, the station shuddered again, more violently this time. A nearby panel exploded in a shower of sparks, forcing them to dive for cover. Lyndon felt the heat sear across his cheek as Nyara's armored form collided with his, pushing him against the wall just as a section of ceiling collapsed where he'd been standing. For a moment, they were pressed together, her armor cool against him despite the chaos around them. Their eyes met at close range, silver into blue, and Lyndon felt something electric pass between them. Thanks, he managed. She didn't move immediately. You would have done the same. It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. In a heartbeat. The moment broke as another tremor ran through the station. They separated, continuing their race toward command. When they arrived, the scene was controlled chaos, officers at their stations, status reports flowing in from all sectors. Stabilizers failing in sectors 2 and 8, reported Officer Reeves. Shield generators offline across the board. Reroute emergency power, Hartford ordered. We need those shields back up before. The rest of her sentence was lost as the lights failed completely, plunging command into darkness before the backup systems engaged, casting everything in dim red emergency lighting. Status report. Hartford demanded. Main power core offline, came the reply. Backup systems functioning at minimal capacity. Life support stable but limited. Lyndon moved to the engineering station, scanning the readouts. The gravitational wave damaged the coolant systems for the primary reactor. We're looking at cascading failures throughout the station unless we can stabilize it. How long? Hartford asked. 3 hours, maybe 4 before critical systems begin to fail, he answered. We need to get a team to the reactor core. Impossible, said Lieutenant Darrens from communications. The access corridors to the reactor level are completely blocked. Structural collapse in sections 14 through 22. There is another way, Nyara's voice cut through the tension, drawing all eyes to her. The maintenance shafts. They run parallel to the main access corridors. Those shafts are barely wide enough for a maintenance drone, Darrens objected. No human could navigate them. I am not human, Nyara stated simply. My physiology allows for greater flexibility within confined spaces. My armor can withstand the radiation levels near the core. Hartford looked between Nyara and the station schematics. Even if you could reach the core, the coolant system requires a complete manual restart sequence. It's a two-person job at minimum. I'll go with her, Lyndon said immediately. I've worked coolant systems on 3 different station classes. Lieutenant, Hartford began. I'm the logical choice, Captain, he interrupted. I'm smallest among the engineering staff, and I've studied every inch of this station out of sheer boredom. Hartford's expression tightened, but she nodded sharply. You have 3 hours. After that, we begin evacuation procedures. As they gathered emergency equipment from the supply lockers outside command, Lyndon caught Nyara watching him with an unreadable expression. What? He asked, checking the seal on his radiation suit. You volunteered quickly, she observed. Why? He paused, considering several possible answers before settling on the truth. Because I trust you. And because no one else on this station understands what you're capable of. She tilted her head, studying him. You believe you understand what I'm capable of? I believe I'm beginning to, he replied, securing the last of his equipment. And I'd like to keep breathing long enough to learn more. Something shifted in her expression, the closest thing to a smile he'd yet seen from her. Then we should hurry, Lieutenant Frost. The station grows more unstable by the minute. As they moved toward the maintenance access point, Lyndon found himself watching the way she moved, the perfect efficiency of each gesture. For months, he had observed her from a distance, cataloging her habits, her preferences, the minute variations in her otherwise impassive demeanor. Now, facing potential death together, he wondered how much he still didn't know about the warrior beside him. The access hatch to the maintenance shaft loomed before them, small and uninviting. Last chance to back out, he said, attempting levity. Nyara's silver eyes met his. I do not back out, Lieutenant. Neither, I suspect, do you. With that, she unsecured the hatch and disappeared into the darkness beyond, her armor's subtle glow the only illumination. Lyndon took a deep breath, checked his oxygen levels one final time, and followed her into the narrow passage that might lead to their salvation, or become their tomb.